Hi, everybody. Today is September 4th. This is the K8s Infra working group meeting. Aaron is not here today, so I'll be running through the agenda today, and we can talk about things. So the first, I think we know everybody on the call today, so skipping that part. Okay, and we can go straight to September 4th. Let me share my screen as well. Share. Okay. Can somebody take notes, please? Okay. So let's start from the billing review. Tim, do you need Justin for it, or do you want to?
I think actually I would, yeah, I would say let's not do the cross-check this cycle. Let's start switching it to every other cycle, since the last few times we've done it, we've always been within cents of each other. So let's just do it once a month at this point and save the time.
Yeah.
I'll throw that on the agenda for next time.
Yeah, we can do this once a month from now. Okay. Then the next question is, let's go through the milestones. Does anybody remember which one that we are using, the ready to migrate stuff or the migrate low risk? This is past due by 1 month. This is past due by 4 days. I think we are mostly done with this. So let's go to the migrate. So as usual, the first problem is, well, not problem. The first opportunity is the Terraform project. What do we do about it?
All right, so Christoph and I sat down for the better part of an hour yesterday. He explained to me all the Terraform stuff. Now that code freeze is behind us, thank God, I was able to actually pay attention and start to ingest it. I've started this morning working on a diff against that with sort of all the features and flags that I think we should turn on. And I will be playing with it right after this. I've got a block of free time put aside to sit and play with it and convince myself that it turns up the cluster that I want. And if so, then we can send a PR to turn on a real one.
Nice.
So hopefully by the time we meet here next week, we will either have that done or we'll have a PR open for discussion.
Do we want to block an hour on your calendar, Tim, on Friday to do this together?
To do the turn up or just to walk through it?
Turn up.
Let me look at my calendar real quickly. I'm not 100% confident that I have the time on Friday. That's why I put time aside today. This one.
That's fine.
Yeah, no, it's fine. I do want to get it done. I might have time on Friday. Hey, Catherine's here. I do have time on Friday before, well, we'll ping up afterwards and we'll see if we can get time together. And anybody else who wants to join, let us know. And if I can pull it off by then we can turn up a real cluster and maybe move something over to it.
Sounds good. Great. Sounds great.
Exciting.
Thank you. Christoph, did you want to add anything there?
Sorry, I only have the small screen.
No, I think we're moving in the right direction. So hopefully, like, fingers crossed, I would really love to get this done this week and have like be able to have a new cluster up and migrate I think we have like a couple workloads live, like what is it that we have live in the current cluster?
We've got the GCS web, we've got the K8s.io redirectors, we've got a handful of
publishing bot.
Publishing bot.
That was the one that I was thinking of.
Oh yes, that's in the new, the half-cooked new cluster. Yeah. So
that's the stuff I want to move over first, so that we can burn down the half-baked one.
Yes, no, that makes complete sense. And I have, Christoph, I have the G-Cloud docs open, and I've been going through every flag one by one and mapping them to the parameter blocks in Terraform. So thanks for explaining it all.
Cool.
Okay. Then the next question I had related to the same topic is, so I understand that we want to move those existing things for sure. I wanted to ask, does a typical pro cluster look any different from the cluster that we are building using the default?
If only we had someone in the room who knew Prow really well.
Exactly.
I don't know what cluster you're building looks like.
I mean, it'll be a GKE cluster. Is there anything special about a Prow cluster?
No.
Okay.
So basically, the thought I had was, can we do the trusted cluster and throw in our secrets and move a few more things in there, including.
Is it easier to do the trusted cluster first or the non-trusted stuff first? Or not, doesn't matter?
I'm not sure how much it matters. The trusted cluster is more complicated, I would say, probably, since it has all the services running it.
Okay.
But.
And what we should probably do, Dims, if you have thoughts here, or Catherine, if you want to help, if you got more free time, because thank you for your time already, would be to just write up a plan of how to migrate Prow. I don't know if there's a partial migration, like if we can turn Prow up in a new cluster and then start moving some jobs, or if it has to sort of be all of it at the same time.
Right. What I was thinking, Catherine, was just one Pro cluster with one job that we know, that we can use. And the example that I was going to use was we have code that reconciles the G Suite groups, and it needs a place to run. And me and Nikita were talking about it on the Slack channel to see if we can run it as a post-submit job in a trusted cluster.
So Prow, you can't run multiple Prows on the same repo because they will fight each other. But if you have a separate repo that you want to run your new Prow on, that would cause no issues. Doing a gradual migration is hard. You can migrate jobs gradually without much trouble, but migrating the services gradually.
Right. I don't want to run the whole of Prow. I just want to start a cluster which the existing Prow can delegate some jobs to.
That is easy.
Okay. That's what I was thinking. I don't want to run a full-fledged Prow on our own yet.
I don't want to be too far away from that. It doesn't sound like it's that impossible, but it does sound that the last thing you said about not running two against one repo is the bit that has me scratching my head.
Yeah, we have no good way at the moment to do a cutover without some downtime.
Okay. So theoretical exercise, if I start a new GKE cluster using the Terraform script, and then I come to test infra and I add some entries in the configuration, that's about it, right? There's nothing more to it for handing off some jobs to this specific cluster?
There should not be.
Okay, so.
Yeah.
Catherine, is there any concern? So like I've had some like scattered conversations with a number of the test infra people about this particular topic. Is there any concerns with the Prow, like the control plane, still existing in the Google-owned project, but then reaching out to a non-Google-owned project to delegate work to? That was a question mark previously. I don't know if that has been like settled. That's cool.
I am not aware of that being a problem, but maybe I don't know things.
Are you asking from a technical perspective or from a policy perspective?
Policy.
Our team doesn't have a policy about it. I don't know if Google does.
I don't think so. Especially in this particular corner case where we're in the middle of medium-term migration anyway.
Okay, so let's, I can work on this portion. I will help with the Terraform tryout, and then I will work with test infra to see if we can do start some things going. Okay.
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 And we should figure out if we need, as we get into this, if we need a whole new cluster for this, or if, like what the trust levels are for this, really.
Right, just for running the one that I mentioned, the groups YAML, you don't need much more than that. But if we are talking about minting an image kind of thing, building a Docker image, for the cluster API, for example, so that will, we'll probably need clusters that we don't really trust fully from the main pro perspective, I guess.
Well, and we have a different plan for that, which I think Catherine's going to talk about for like specifically the building images part. But like specifically for this job and like other trusted kind of jobs like this, the thing that I'm cautious about is setting things up in the wrong order, right? I want to make sure that when we're migrating, like I want to migrate Prow and I would love to migrate Prow very quickly, but I don't necessarily want to move it in the wrong order. So I think we need to write up what we're going to do before we push any buttons to stand up any clusters. Like write down what the game plan is and make sure that like in particular, like Catherine and the test infra team are like all thumbs up. This is a good plan. Let's actually go push the button.
Yes.
Yeah, of course. No questions asked. We just need somebody to own that part. That would be the issue here. Trying to come up with the initial plan. Okay, we can table that for now, since nobody is jumping up and down saying yay. Okay, so let's move on to the next item on the agenda, which is Catherine's proposal. And the counter or the alternative that we were already looking at is from Jason. So Catherine, can I request Jason to give an update on what they've tried so far, and then we can flow to your proposal from there?
Sure.
Okay. Jason?
Yep. All right. So we went ahead and started a POC using GitHub Actions, and I linked to the workflow that we defined in the agenda topic. We've tested it against personally owned Google accounts, and we're able to successfully push images up using that workflow. But we're blocked on a formal service account to be able to push to the actual staging bucket right now.
Right, and can you explain what were the components of it, Jason?
Yep. So we have a GitHub workflow defined that basically just calls a makefile target that we've defined that does a multi-architecture build and a manifest list image creation, and then pushes those to the defined GCR bucket.
Okay.
That happens on post submit right now to master. We were also looking at setting up a similar job that would execute on tag pushes as well.
Okay.
So
So
to do that, you require, so the credential pieces, we need to download the JSON credential for a service account and feed that into GitHub. Is that right?
Right now, what we do is we have it defined as a secret or secret within GitHub, where we fed that, which we use for doing the initial testing. And I know we had the last meeting when we had talked about this, we talked about potentially having the ability for somebody to set that service account so that it's not known to the other users. But it would require, some type of action from somebody that has the ability to create those service accounts to populate that secret.
So I haven't used the GitHub secrets stuff. What do we know about it? Like, how is it protected? What you just said actually triggered me a little bit.
So I can chime in here.
Go ahead. So the stuff that I've done with it before has been very, very basic, but it's basically you put it in and then you can't pull it out. It's there, it's in the stuff, and then it gets exposed as, you can expose it as an environment variable in the container, because GitHub Actions runs as a container. Obviously, if you do something specific, there's ways that you could potentially extract that secret. If you are like a malicious repo administrator, there is a potential to extract that secret where you like merge an action that goes and posts it somewhere else. GitHub has protections against it streaming out in the logs, even if you make a mistake. But if you have like a malicious script that like pulls the secret in the container and then sends it to a remote place, it is possible for a repo admin to extract it, but it's difficult. And GitHub does not allow you to do it from the web UI.
You specifically said repo admin. What about like a PR submitter?
Workflows run based off of what's merged, not based off of what's in the PR branch.
All right.
So you can't create a PR that would extract the secret, but if a malicious PR got merged, even if there's not a repo admin that does it, if a malicious PR got merged, then that workflow would become what's on the master branch and would be what's executed.
Yeah, and even if you ran a per PR type of action, that action actually runs under the user's GitHub account and wouldn't have access to the secrets defined on the Kubernetes SIG hosted repo. It would run against their fork.
Yeah.
I had two questions. One is, who has access to the logs of the post-summit job in this case? And the other one is, we have right now, all the GitHub access, we have owners and maintainers, I guess. So what level do you have to be to, do different things with the GitHub action?
So the second question is the more straightforward one. The second question is like who can do things. So to add a secret or to view the available secrets, you need to be a repo admin. To make changes to the workflow files and what happens inside the GitHub action, you need merge access. Like anybody that can merge a thing can do that. So that'd be anybody with manual merge access or anybody that has like LGTM approved and can like approve something into that folder can make the change.
Okay, and for the first one, the logs of the runs, just in case something fails, right? We merge something and it fails. How does somebody who is not an admin or a maintainer or an owner, whatever you pick, can look at it?
I believe the logs report back like as a check, a GitHub check. So like the equivalent of a PR status. So anybody is able to view those logs. You don't need any special access to be able to view those logs. If you could see the repo, you can see the logs.
Okay, so this is not a periodic one. This is only post-summit, which means it gets triggered once after the merge. So
you still report back status against the commit.
Okay, and if we need to re-trigger because something is flaky, then we open one more PR and merge it again.
I think there's also a re-trigger mechanism in Actions v2, but I'm not entirely clear on that. I know that was like something GitHub was talking about. But.
Okay.
And for the use case that we had in mind for Cluster API, for a post submit on master, if we missed, a push for one particular commit, it's not a huge deal. It's more about kind of improving the general developer workflow and not necessarily having to build, to test the latest.
Right, I understand that. I'm asking that question because, with the image promoter, we did run into this situation where we had to try, we ran into flakes when we pushed things into production and we didn't show up in testing. So we had to re-trigger the pro job multiple times. Especially when we are trying to do from a tag, right? Instead of doing every commit push.
And
okay.
So again, I apologize for not knowing GitHub Actions real well. What are the what performance and queue and concurrent runs, et cetera? Are we concerned about those things at all?
No, but from my work with Actions so far, no, that isn't really concerned. GitHub Actions are not particularly performant. I think they give you one CPU and 4 or 8 gigs of RAM per action, and they're spun up it's a container inside a dedicated VM that spins up for your particular action and then gets destroyed afterwards. They're not particularly highly performant, and things that would take a very long time would also take a very long time inside of a GitHub action. But for simple basic tasks, they are decent. And for something like container creation and push, that particular workflow, I have done that workflow a number of times. They work. It's nothing super fancy, but it does functionally do the job.
Yeah, I expect for most of the sub projects we're talking about so far, this is not a problem. I'm just thinking forward to if we try to build KK this way. Okay.
I would not recommend it for KK at all in any way, shape, or form. Would not recommend it.
Okay. Then the last question I have is, can we trigger the GitHub Actions from Pro using an API?
The capability is there in theory. This was an open question the last time. The GitHub admin team for Kubernetes, we've met with GitHub twice on Actions, and we're planning another meeting soon and we're going to try and wrap in some of the test infra folks, the Prow folks into that conversation. It's possible in theory, but there's some caveats there, and we've never tested anything like it, triggering off a GitHub action with a webhook, that flow. We have not tested at all.
Okay. Okay. That's all I had. Thank you. Any other questions? Chris, did you want to say something?
No, I just was Christoph's echo chamber, basically. They've made no performance guarantees, and they're relatively lightweight, slow.
Right. And if it's a really big container stuff, we'll probably run into trouble, especially with the PPC and other S390X images and stuff like that. Okay. So Catherine, would you like to talk through yours? Yes, please.
Sure.
That's somebody else's.
Someone else. Whatever.
Do you want to load yours? I have it up on a different tab.
Sure.
Oh, this is not yours?
I mean, it is, but she can't control the screen.
Okay, I'll stop sharing. Please share your screen.
Let me share the screen then. I share screen. Where did I put the share screen? Desktop. So you don't need to see the chat. Can you guys see screen?
Yeah.
All yours.
Okay. How do I scroll?
Oh, you have to use the nipple.
Okay. So basically, this is attempting to solve the same problem, but using GCB and Prow, which are tools we already use to solve these sorts of problems. I have no idea how I scroll on this computer.
You need page down, I guess. Sorry, I've become so used to it.
That doesn't actually work.
What? What is it doing? You broke my docs. I use mouse. I mean, use.
Okay. Okay. So basically, the idea is that we would use prow to trigger a GCB job, and then GCB builds your container, pushes it somewhere, and reports back to prow, which you can then access for logs in the usual way. The upshot to this is basically that it is a mechanism we already use and have built tools for, and we know it to work. It has the properties we want from it, i.e. that it has reasonable security properties and that anyone can see how things were built. And it has the automation we want. It's not terribly complicated, so I don't have a lot to say about it.
I mean, I can ask questions to guide if you want.
Feel free.
Okay. So first question is, say I'm starting a new repository and a new image. What do I have to do as a developer to try this out? And other than, like, if you when Jason said, "Oh, there's a make target," and we were able to run the same make target from GitHub Action. So what is the equivalent in here?
So in terms of building, you can still run the same make target if you like. That should work fine. You will need to have some image to run your make target in, but those are not terribly hard to come across. Or make
so how do I invoke the things in the cloud build.yaml, essentially, right?
Yeah.
So I have to write the cloud build.yaml and then I have to run it somehow.
Yeah.
Locally.
So in order to run it locally, you can, so if you want to test it, I'm bad at words today. If you want to test it locally, GCB has tooling that will run your job as if it was in GCB, but on your machine, which is handy for that. Or you can use G-Cloud commands to run it against your own project as well. And GCB provides you with free time for that sort of testing. Once you want to run it in production, then you will need to have your staging GCR set up. And as part of that setup process, I'm proposing that we would set up a trusted prow job that automatically submits to your, that runs post submits on your job when you, I'm doing badly at words here. When you merge to master, then a trusted prow job will be set up automatically as part of the GCR setup process automatically. And then that will run your job for you. So you don't touch that, but instead you just touch the cloudbuild.yaml in your repo, and that gets run automatically as a result of the setup done when your staging repo is created.
And that works really well if there's one-to-one for the staging repo and the Git repo. If we have multiple Git repos, so basically the staging repos are for sub-projects. They're not necessarily for Git repos. So ostensibly, a staging project will have more than one Git repo associated with it. So for each Git repo, we need to make a prow PR. That's right.
So I would imagine that when you're setting up the GCR staging repos, whatever configuration you have for that could include the list of Git repos associated with it, and then that creates a PR that adds for post submits for all of them, and a new PR if you change the list.
Right. So if I add a new Git repo, I have to make a new prow PR. But they're small prow PRs.
They're small prow PRs with completely deterministic content.
Okay.
I think indeed the suggestion is automatically generating the prow PRs, so you don't actually need to think about them.
Okay. So can we do both periodic jobs and post-summit jobs?
In theory, I have not thought about how doing periodics would work in terms of actually getting them configured.
What do you want to do periodically?
I'm just thinking aloud here, just to look at the possibilities.
Oh, okay.
This would be like similar to the CI cross jobs, if you know that, right? So the CI cross jobs runs every day, once every day, because it's costly to run it on every PR merge. So we run it every day. So if there are jobs similar where we have to mint a lot of images, and we want to do it just once a day.
That's to build the cross-platform binaries, or that's to build the cross-tool stuff?
Right now, the CI cross it builds all the binaries once per day, I think, or once every 8 hours, something like that.
Sorry, I'm still confused. That's for the cross-compiler tool, or that's for each, like cluster API AWS?
No, this is CI cross runs on KK repository, so it generates the binaries that we need for all the platforms.
The equivalent of a make cross in KK.
Correct.
But like it spits out all the cross-compiled binaries,
right?
For like kubelet and stuff.
And we tend to run it only periodically, just because it sucks up too much CPU and memory and whatnot.
Got it. So that's a good open question.
Yeah. So nothing prevents doing that in theory, and it would work fine. But it does require configuring a periodic trial job, which increases the complexity of the trial job file that we have.
But we don't expect a whole lot of these, right, Dims?
Of what?
Of periodics. Like the use case that you gave is an interesting one, but I don't think we'll have more than a handful of those, right?
Right. This would be mainly for the KK and test infra repositories.
Why does test infra need one?
If you don't need one, then it's fine. I thought you had a lot of images too.
We do, but we build them on every time they get committed.
Okay, then.
Not many things take as long as KK to build.
Our manifests are big, so. Okay.
Yeah, we actually already use this for all the images in test infra and build those every single time a commit changes them.
So I think it's worth pointing out a couple things that I like about this proposal. One is the logs go to a place that's consistent with all the other logs of everything else that we're doing, where we've built our own relatively nice UX around it and we control our destiny. And the other part is the future for identity and credentials is actually pretty slick, where we wouldn't actually need the JSON file at all. We would just use the newer workload identity feature, which would allow us to specify IAM rules in terms of GKE cluster. So I could basically say, this GKE cluster in this identity space is allowed to push to this GCB, and that's it. There's no credential download anywhere.
So is this already ready, Tim, or is this something in the future?
It's alpha now,
okay.
And we have to move the prow stuff into a cluster that was contained by an ID namespace or something like that. So it's not quite ready, but this is the demonstration that has been made.
Okay, so for now, what do we have to do when we are running the ensure shell scripts? We generate some service accounts and then we talk to on-call and upload it in the cluster.
Yeah.
We would need to figure out, I don't know what we're doing for best practice for sharing credentials with the prow on-call folks, but mostly it's been SneakerNet so
Pretty
far.
much.
So we'll have to figure out what that practice would be.
Right.
But yes, it's a one-time thing.
Okay.
Unless we change those credentials.
Right. We can still do git crypt and do the handshake, just so we know what we are doing and make sure that the test infra folks who are on call have their credentials in the git crypt too.
Something like that, yes.
Yeah. Okay. Jason, did you have any concerns or questions about this process here being proposed?
No, as long as it meets our requirements, I'm good with whatever process we have. You know.
What specifically are your requirements?
So the requirements we have are one around trying to create the kind of like the developer use case images just for testing cross repo, because we do have multiple repos that are working in concert. So that would be the post submit on master, just to be able to build and push to the staging repository. And then we're trying to automate our release process more. So if we can also automate pushes on tag pushes, then that helps us with that part, that part of the automation as well. So that's really the only requirements that we have.
The tag push, is that also to the staging repository, or is that to somewhere else?
Staging. No, they would always be to staging. Just the idea is that we would tag it, the tag that we would push on a tag push for the build would be different than what we would do for the post submit on master, where we would just like update latest in the staging bucket. But when we generate the tag, we want that to actually build with the associated tag that we would intend to promote using the image promoter for the release.
We should think, I mean, I have no real strong opinions about it, but in terms of workflow, you can rename a tag as it goes through the promoter. So we don't need the tag to be named in any particular format in the staging repo, right?
Yeah, the bigger thing there is to, ensure that the image is built based off of the tag versus the latest, whatever the latest commit to master is.
All right, I can see that from a human point of view.
Yep.
Are you tagging something that is not a master branch commit, or are you tagging a specific commit in master branch that exists in master?
It could potentially be off of a release branch as well, and not just master for that use
Okay.
case.
Yeah, because like the workflow there that would make sense to me would be like so in a post submit, you push a unique tag with the git commit as part of the tag, and then you also retag latest. If that's the latest in master, you also retag it, so you have two tags that are pointing at the same image. And then the promoter would be like, okay, so this particular commit, this is the one that I want to promote, and then rename its tag through the workflow. But
the promoter works on SHA-256, yeah. So there's no ambiguity about which source tag you used. Yeah. The tags in staging are purely for humans.
Right.
So it would be nice for a human to be able to look at the tag and say, okay, this is commit XYZ123, even though it's SHA, blah, 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 blah. And I can map that commit back to a tag or back to the Git repo. Whether the tag is human friendly or not doesn't really matter. It's more for humans to be able to identify it.
Yeah.
That makes sense.
Let me just open up to see if anybody else had anything to say. Vince or Linus, James, anything on this topic?
No, I think Tim said everything I want to say.
So if this sounds okay, Jason and or Vince, can we talk you into doing a sort of an equivalent POC on this?
Yeah, I would be open to it. In terms of timeline, sorry, I missed like the first part of the meeting. What's the timeline to implement this, and how quickly, I guess, we can move on it?
I mean, I could activate the GCB for your specific staging today, which will automatically create the service account, right?
Yeah.
Needed for the GCB push. I could hand Catherine or whoever's on call today the JSON file by SneakerNet, and the prow and GCB YAML file, I guess you can help us template. So we could literally do it today.
Yeah, that would be awesome. I'm around.
I've blocked some time specifically after this meeting to follow up on stuff from today. So if you guys are game, do you have time after this? Do you have another meeting? Yes. So yeah, we can make some time after this, I think, to do this.
Sounds good. We have the cluster API meeting at 10 PST, but after that, like anytime. Great.
Okay, so I'll take the action item to I'll do a one-off GCB enable for you. I won't script it yet, but I'll just one-off it for your which staging repo, cluster API, or which one do you have? I forget.
It would be, I guess, do we want to do the POC just in cluster API or also the other two JSON?
Let's start the POC in cluster API, and then if we get that going successful, we can look at expanding it.
Sounds good.
Okay. If we do more than one, then I'll have an excuse to script it.
I can give you 3 if you want.
I'd rather, I mean, if we can get by with one, then one's probably better. So I'll one off GCB enable the cluster API staging, and I'll share JSON with the Prow folks, and I will ask Catherine if she can put together a example of the Prow and GCB YAML in, I guess, 2 example files.
Who is doing the Cloud Builder YAML?
Well, you'll have to merge it into your repo. So if we send you an example, you can fill in the blanks, right?
Yep.
Sounds good to me.
Okay.
And then we'll see if it works. Then try it out. And if we have problems with it, then we either iron out the problems or we evaluate their options again.
Yeah,
Sounds like a plan.
I'm really thank you for writing this up and bringing this to us, Catherine, because I really like this option because it actually could solve the KK problem too. Because the GitHub Action workflow, I think would work fine for a lot of repos, although it is like more finicky in getting each individual repo set up and onboarded, but it would work very well for the smaller repos, I think. But having something that we can like stamp out in template and be like, okay, you need a config build. Here's our default option to go and build a Docker image and push it into staging. And have that done in a very consistent way and in a way that could also work for like the KK images is fantastic.
Right. And the other thing that I like about this is it reduces the burden on the GitHub admins, the maintainers that we were talking about for looking at tweaking the logs and jobs and whatnot. Okay, thank you. So
I have no selfish desires in there at all.
I think about you too, Christoph. Okay, so the next item, we already talked about it unless we need to talk a little bit more. Terraform for cluster turnup, I think we talked about. We
covered it.
Yeah. So James, do you want to talk about the next one, the cert manager update, please?
Hey, yeah. I just dropped that one in there just so we can kind of get an idea as to how we can go about approaching getting it done. So I put in a pull request the other day to update Cert Manager to version 0.9 from 0.7. This is in response to, I think it's November 1st. Let's Encrypt will no longer service Cert Manager clients older than 0.8, so 0.7 and below. As a result, obviously, we should update, and generally we should update anyway. So I put in a pull request, and I've also documented on there the steps needed to actually apply it, as there are, I think it's minimal, but there's a couple of extra steps to take as it goes. I'm more than happy to do that myself along with someone. I just don't have any access to that cluster, so obviously I'm not able to.
Yeah, sadly, that is one of those clusters that is still the Google hands only, and that's why we're trying to get this all done. And I don't know who I can punt it to, so it might end up being me, which means that's bad news. You said you have a PR open. Can you assign it to me? And I'll take a look at it and see if I can get somebody to drive it from the side.
Sure thing. Yeah, I'll assign it to you now so you can take a look. It shouldn't take too long to do. It should be like a half-hour job maximum. As I say, I'm more than happy if it's possible for me to sit on a call, just screen sharing and watch. I don't know how Google sensitive it is and if I'm even allowed to see it.
It's not that it's Google sensitive. I'm just not allowed to give you access to those projects because I can't say for sure what the projects are linked to.
What's in them?
The other thing that I would bring up is like, so it's September. We have 2 months until November 1st. Yes, we should be updating anyway. Are we okay, James, if we put this off a couple weeks and just because I would rather focus on the tear down and build up of these services and getting the proper version of Cert Manager running in the real cluster that we're going to build hopefully on Friday.
Yeah, no, absolutely. That's fine. Let's just say if we get to, end of October and we're still in this position, then ping me and we'll do an emergency session. I'll find some time.
All right. Well, send me the PR and I'll take a look at it. And if I feel like I can knock it out, then I'll knock it out. If I can't, then we'll push it and see if we can get the new clusters up. I like Christoph's plan.
Great. Cool. Sounds good to me.
The other one that I didn't add to the agenda, but I just remembered is I have a PR in flight for managing all the mailing lists in the G Suite with all the custom settings for each one of the mailing lists ready. And I've tried it out and it works fine. Nikita took a quick look. I would like to request Tim and Christoph to take a look and then we can merge it.
Okay. Is it just like the groups where there's just a YAML file and
it's the same groups.yaml. It just has more metadata about each mailing list.
Okay, go ahead and assign me the PR. Assign me the PR. If you don't assign it to me, I will never see it. I have to keep reminding people of this.
Absolutely, I'll do that. I was waiting for Christoph to take a look, but yeah, I'll do that.
Okay.
And
I'm sorry, I was focused on the Terraform stuff for the little time that I had yesterday, Dims. But yeah, I'll try and take a look at that today so we can merge that because I know we'll want to get that moved forward too.
No worries. So we have 8 minutes left. Let me just go through everybody and quickly and see if there's anything else. Justin, did you have anything? Is COPS doing fine? Images, GCS, whatever? We can't hear you. Okay, mic broken. Okay, so you're good. Okay, thank you. Arno, Linus, anything specific you wanted to talk about?
Yeah, but I think there's enough discussion happening online anyway on various tickets, so I think I'm good.
Okay. So Linus, one thing I wanted to mention, I pulled you into one Slack conversation with a pivotal person. They are trying to do the same thing that we are doing. They have a promotion process for air-gapped scenarios where they want to move images from a public registry to an air-gapped registry. And they are using, the similar libraries that we are using. So that was one thing that I wanted to make sure that you are aware of.
Yeah, thanks.
Okay. Yeah. Anybody else?
One thing that came up and we had the first review was the Go shortener, so go.k8s.io. And we have a few things that are still unclear, mostly related to how we would do things in the new cluster. That probably is something that we can push off until we have the new cluster. And one thing that Tim proposed was if we use TextDirect, we need a staging repo for it to basically build under the Kubernetes GCR. So that would be the next pull request if that makes sense. Basically, create a group, create a staging repo. That would also allow me to, at the same time, test the promoter stuff. And then I already basically went through the whole review from Tim. So if you have some time, a re-review might be helpful. And what we still have to figure out is basically how we're going to do the DNS and then later on the DNS self-service. Especially if we only want to test it, do we create it on a separate subdomain first instead of hijacking the go.kubernetes.io and go with like go-testing.kubernetes.io or something that we basically can go through the whole process of pull request, review, push, and basically the canary process, even so it's manual, without impacting the old DNS records. That would be a first step before we automate everything properly. Because without the automation, I have a problem on hijacking the Go K8s.io already.
Yeah, so I appreciate your patience on that. I have not lost track of it. I just haven't been able to shift back to it. We already have the canary.k8s.io subdomain put aside. So whenever we do a DNS push, we push to the canary zone first. And then we have a script that runs over the input YAML and verifies that all the names we expect to resolve actually do resolve against the canary. Then we push to the real zone. Does that satisfy what you need here?
The question is how does it work with the timeline? The problem with us pushing to the canary and then waiting, let's say a month or two until we actually deploy it, I have the feeling that that might collide with any other DNS updates, and I'm not sure if that's something that we want to have lying around in canary and therefore might be accidentally pushed to production.
Yeah, no, I don't want to push anything to canary that isn't going to production imminently. Yeah. But like the DNS push script that we have today does this process where it pushes to canary, waits up to like 2 or 3 minutes for any propagation. And then if that fails after a couple of minutes, it aborts. So I feel like that if we write the test to cover the Go redirects, that should be sufficient, I think. I just haven't had the time to dig into it by hand.
So on the DNS side, yes, probably. And then we need the tests for the actual redirects, which I was thinking about if there might be something like a simple script, something program that actually does take in a list of what should resolve at least, and then checking that against the live URL.
Look at the canary test script that's there already. It parses the OctoDNS YAML and figures out what the expected result is based on that. So if you want to extend it to parse your text records, then it should be able to extend that test.
The question is, do we want to, on the DNS side, we want to check for the text records, or will we test on the deploy of the specific deployment, basically, of the redirector?
I mean, the way you add a new record is by adding a DNS text record, right?
True.
So if that's the mechanism, that's the thing that's changing, that's the opportunity. Right now it's human-driven, but it will eventually be automation-driven, and the automation will push to canary, run whatever the acceptance test is, and then decide whether or not to push to prod. So that seems like the moment to be doing these redirect tests. It's a little bit of a mess in terms of conflation of intentions, but since we're using DNS as the mechanism, it seems appropriate.
I'm concerned about the mess that we're getting. Like, how complicated are we going to make this? Like, I'm all for the loop of like, okay, we're creating a DNS record. We want to verify, did that DNS record as we set get created? Did the text record get created? I don't want to block a DNS change on like the redirector not consuming those DNS records appropriately. I'd want that to be its own separate loop and verify. And we don't necessarily need to verify every single record that we have. If we verify like, hey, okay, here's some like examples that we're monitoring and making sure that the redirector is working as expected. We have this text record that we know is going to redirect to this particular site. Do we get that expected response from the redirector as a canary test to make sure that we didn't break the redirector in a change that we made?
Yeah, I agree. So as far as the tests are concerned, I would basically check a test record for the text record. So if we actually created it correctly, the second test, which would be on a deploy on the redirector, would be, does the redirector have a specific test record that actually does the redirect as we wanted? And if it defaults to the correct default or fallback domain, such as Kubernetes.io, if anything breaks or something. And the third test would be a general, if you go with Terraform, we have the ability to go with stack driver tests because they're implemented in Terraform. So we could have some monitoring on live production redirects. So that would be something that might make more sense on, do we break something in the overall end-to-end type production thing?
All right. Well, I need to go. I'm getting kicked out, but I have to think about that then because I'm not sure how I think about it. So I'll have to chew on it.
All right. I'll write it in the pull requests, and then that should be fine for all.
Perfect. Thank you very much.
Yeah. Awesome.
Thanks a lot, everyone. Bye for today.
See ya.